The bullet struck the wooden beam just inches from Katherine Miller's head, sending splinters flying as she ducked behind the counter of her small mercantile shop. It was 1878 in the dusty town of Broken Ridge, Arizona Territory, and this was the third time this month that Horace Wilkins and his cronies had shot up her store. "Come on out, Cat," Horace bellowed, his voice thick with whiskey. "Your pa's debts ain't gonna pay themselves." Katherine pressed her back against the rough wood of the counter, her heart hammering in her chest. At 22, she had inherited nothing but debt and this failing shop after her father passed 6 months ago. The drought had been hard on everyone, but especially on the Miller family, who had lost nearly everything when their small ranch dried up. "I told you, I need more time," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Business will pick up when the cattle drives come through next month." Raucous laughter followed her plea. "Ain't nobody gonna shop at a pauper's store. You're just prolonging the inevitable, girl." Katherine closed her eyes, fighting back tears. The townsfolk had been clear a woman with no money and no prospects wasn't worth the time or effort to court, much less marry. And without a husband in these parts, her future looked bleak. The saloon doors swung open with a creak, and heavy boots thudded across the wooden floor. "I believe the lady asked for more time," a deep voice drawled. Katherine peered over the counter to see a tall man standing in the doorway, backlit by the harsh midday sun. His silhouette revealed broad shoulders beneath a worn duster, a wide-brimmed hat, and a holster strapped to his thigh. Horace snorted. "This ain't your business, stranger. I'm making it my business." The man stepped fully into the store, and Katherine could finally see him clearly: sun-bronzed skin, sharp blue eyes, and a jawline shadowed with stubble. He couldn't have been more than 30. "Name's Lucas Sterling. Just rode into town looking for supplies, and I find you boys terrorizing a lady. Doesn't seem too hospitable." Horace's hand hovered near his pistol. "She owes money. Her pa died owing half the town." Lucas glanced at Katherine, who had slowly risen to her feet, clutching a small derringer that had belonged to her father. "That true, miss?" Lucas asked. "My father had debts," she admitted, "but I'm working to pay them off honestly. These men just won't give me the chance." Lucas nodded, his eyes never leaving Horace. "Well then, gentlemen, I suggest you give the lady the time she needs. I'll be staying in town a while, and I don't take kindly to bullies." There was something in his stance, a coiled readiness that made the three men exchange glances. Horace might have been brave with whiskey in his veins, but he wasn't fool enough to draw against a man who stood like he knew how to use the weapon at his hip. "Fine," Horace spat. "1 month, Cat, not a day more." He backed toward the door, his friends following. "But no man's gonna want a woman so poor she can't even keep her daddy's store afloat. Remember that." When they had gone, Katherine released a shaky breath and lowered the derringer. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling." "Lucas," he corrected with a small smile, "and you are Katherine Miller." "Most folks call me Cat." He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Miller. Sorry about your troubles." Katherine straightened her apron, suddenly aware of her faded dress and the dust that seemed to coat everything in the store. "Can I help you find something, as thanks for your intervention?" "Actually, I need quite a bit," Lucas said, glancing around the small shop. "Just took on a job at the Crawford Ranch and need to stock up." Katherine's eyes widened. "The Crawford place, that's the biggest spread in the territory." "So I've heard. Foreman hired me on as the new head wrangler." He picked up a tin of coffee from a nearby shelf. "I'll take this, some tobacco, ammunition for a Winchester, couple yards of rope, and whatever food supplies you recommend for a man who can't cook worth a damn." For the first time in weeks, Katherine smiled genuinely. This was exactly the kind of sale she needed. As she gathered his supplies, Lucas leaned against the counter, watching her with curious eyes. "If you don't mind my asking, how bad are your debts?" Katherine hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Bad enough. Pa borrowed to keep the ranch going during the drought. When that failed, he put everything into this store, then his heart gave out." She swallowed hard. "I've got about $300 to pay off, which might as well be $3,000 for all I can manage." Lucas whistled low. "That's steep." Hence Horace's certainty that I'll fail. She placed the last of his items on the counter. That'll be $12.45. Lucas paid without haggling, which surprised her. Most customers these days tried to whittle her down to nothing. "You know," he said, gathering his purchases, "I might have a proposition for you if you're interested in earning some extra money." Katherine stiffened. She'd heard propositions before, usually from men who thought a desperate woman would do anything for cash. Lucas must have read her expression because he quickly added, "Nothing improper, Miss Miller." The Crawford Ranch is hosting a big gathering next month, owners trying to impress some Eastern investors. They need someone to help with the cooking and serving. Pays $15 for 3 days' work. $15, Katherine repeated, hardly believing it. Plus meals and a place to stay during the event. He settled his hat back on his head. "Think it over. I'll stop by tomorrow for your answer." With that, he tipped his hat and walked out, leaving Katherine staring after him, wondering if fate had finally decided to give her a chance. True to his word, Lucas returned the next day. Katherine had thought of little else but his offer. $15 would help chip away at her debt, and she could close the store for those days without losing much business. There wasn't much to lose anyway. "I'll do it," she told him when he walked in, not bothering with pleasantries. Lucas smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "Good, Mrs. Crawford will be pleased. She was worried about finding enough help. When do they need me?" 3 weeks from now. "I can come pick you up in the wagon if you'd like." Katherine nodded gratefully. "That would be helpful, thank you." Over the next few weeks, Lucas became a regular at Katherine's store. He'd stop by every few days, sometimes to purchase small items, sometimes just to check that Horace and his friends weren't causing trouble. Each visit lasted a little longer than the last, their conversations stretching beyond simple commerce. She learned he'd grown up in Texas, the son of a cattle rancher. He'd left home at 18 to make his own way, working on ranches across the Southwest. He'd fought in a few skirmishes during the tail end of the war, though he didn't like to talk about it much. He could ride anything with 4 legs, preferred the open range to towns, and had a weakness for peppermint candy that made him seem younger than his 29 years. In turn, Katherine told him about growing up as an only child after her mother died of fever, helping her father with the ranch, her dreams of someday seeing San Francisco. She confessed her fear of failing, of losing the store and having nowhere to go. "You're tougher than you give yourself credit for," Lucas told her one evening as he helped her restock a high shelf. "Most women would have sold out and left by now." "Where would I go?" she asked. "This is all I have left of my family." Something in her voice must have touched him because his expression softened. "Family's important, I understand that." The day before she was to leave for the Crawford Ranch, Mayor Dunlap and his wife came into the store. They were the wealthiest family in town, and Mrs. Dunlap rarely deigned to shop at Katherine's establishment. "We need tablecloths and napkins," Mrs. Dunlap announced, her nose wrinkling at the dust on the counter. "For the investors' dinner at the Crawfords. The ones we ordered from Phoenix haven't arrived." Katherine helped them choose from her limited selection of linens, keeping her expression neutral when Mrs. Dunlap commented, "I suppose these will have to do, though they are hardly the quality our guests expect." As Katherine wrapped their purchase, Mrs. Dunlap leaned toward her husband. "I heard that new wrangler at the Crawfords has been spending time here. What was his name?" "Sterling," the mayor replied. "Lucas Sterling. Crawford says he's the best horseman he's seen in years." "Well, I hope he's not wasting his time. A man with prospects like that could court any girl in the county. He shouldn't settle for someone who can barely keep a roof over her head." Katherine's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes down, continuing to wrap the linens as though she hadn't heard. "Now, Martha," the mayor said, though his tone lacked conviction. "I'm only saying what everyone thinks," Mrs. Dunlap continued. "The Miller girl is too poor to be a suitable match for anyone of standing. What man wants to take on another man's debts?" Katherine handed over the package with a tight smile. "That will be $4.20, Mrs. Dunlap." The woman paid and swept out of the store, her husband trailing behind with an apologetic glance. When they were gone, Katherine sank onto her stool behind the counter. Mrs. Dunlop's words echoing in her mind. She wasn't wrong. What kind of future could Katherine offer anyone? Lucas had been kind to her, perhaps even friendly, but she'd be a fool to imagine it was anything more. The next morning, Katherine locked up her store and waited on the porch with a small carpet bag containing her best dress and a few necessities. Right on time, a wagon appeared down the street with Lucas at the reins. He pulled up in front of her store and jumped down, taking her bag. "Ready for 3 days of hard work and fancy folks?" he asked with a grin. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The Crawford Ranch was impressive, a sprawling main house with a wide veranda, surrounded by stables, bunkhouses, and corrals that seemed to stretch for miles. Cattle dotted the distant pastures, and cowboys on horseback moved among them like ants. Mrs. Crawford, a stout woman with kind eyes, met them at the kitchen door. "You must be Miss Miller. Lucas speaks highly of you." She led Katherine through the bustling kitchen. "We'll have 12 guests staying with us, plus the family and the regular hands. It's all hands on deck for the next few days." Katherine was put to work immediately, helping prepare rooms for the guests, polishing silver, and assisting the cook. The work was hard but straightforward, and she was grateful for the distraction from her troubles in town. That evening, as she was laying out dessert plates in the dining room, Lucas appeared in the doorway. He'd cleaned up, wearing a crisp white shirt and dark trousers instead of his usual work clothes. "The guests are arriving," he told her. "Mrs. Crawford asked me to come to dinner tonight, something about wanting to show off her knowledgeable staff to the investors." He ran a finger around his collar, looking uncomfortable. "Never did like playing dress up." Katherine smiled. "You look very handsome." He met her eyes, and for a moment, something passed between them that made her breath catch. "Thank you," he said softly. The dinner was elegant by frontier standards. Katherine and 2 other girls served the courses, while Mr. Crawford regaled his guests with stories of the ranch's success and potential. The Eastern investors, 3 gentlemen in expensive suits, and their equally well-dressed wives, seemed impressed. Katherine tried to remain invisible as she served, but she felt Lucas's eyes on her throughout the meal. Once, when she leaned over to pour wine, he whispered, "You're doing fine," giving her the confidence to continue when one of the investors' wives made a dismissive comment about local help. After the meal, the men retired to the study for brandy and cigars, while the women gathered in the parlor. Katherine was clearing the last of the dishes when she overheard Mrs. Dunlop, who had been invited as the mayor's wife, speaking to one of the investors' wives. "It's so hard to find proper help out here," Mrs. Dunlop was saying. "That serving girl, the dark-haired one, owns a little store in town, but she'll likely lose it soon. Her father left her nothing but debts." "How unfortunate," the other woman replied with little interest. "Yes, though I worry about young Sterling. He's the handsome one who sat at the end of the table. He seems to have taken an interest in her, poor man. He clearly doesn't realize what a burden a penniless wife would be." Katherine nearly dropped the stack of plates she was carrying. She hurried back to the kitchen, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Of course, Mrs. Dunlop would make sure everyone knew of Katherine's circumstances. She'd probably be dismissed after the event who would want someone so deeply in debt working in their home, with access to valuable silver and crystal. She worked mechanically for the rest of the evening, avoiding the dining room when she knew Lucas would be there. When the guests finally retired for the night, Katherine helped with the final cleanup before heading to the small room she'd been assigned in the servants' quarters. She was crossing the yard between the main house and the servants' quarters when she heard footsteps behind her. "Katherine." Lucas's voice was quiet in the darkness. "Wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "It's late, Mr. Sterling. I should get some rest." "Mr. Sterling?" He came around to face her, his expression puzzled in the moonlight. "What happened to Lucas?" "I think it's better if we maintain proper distance," she said stiffly. "People are already talking." Understanding dawned on his face. "You heard what Mrs. Dunlop said." Katherine lifted her chin. "She wasn't wrong. I am in debt. I probably will lose the store. And you don't need to tie yourself to someone who's one step away from destitution." Is that what you think I'm doing? Feeling sorry for you? His voice had an edge to it now. Aren't you, the mysterious stranger who rides into town and rescues the damsel in distress? She shook her head. I appreciate your help, truly, but I don't need your pity. Pity? Lucas ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Katherine, I've been riding the range since I was 18 years old. I've worked on a dozen ranches across 4 territories. Do you know what I have to show for it? A good horse, a decent saddle, and enough money saved to maybe buy a small plot of land someday. By Mrs. Dunlop's standards, I'm just as poor as you are. Katherine blinked, taken aback. But your position here pays well enough, but I won't be rich from it. He stepped closer. When I came into your store that first day, I wasn't looking to be a hero. I just couldn't stand seeing someone being bullied, and then I got to know you, your strength, your determination. The way you refuse to give up even when everyone expects you to fail. He took her hands in his and she didn't pull away. I don't care about your debts, Katherine. You're the richest person I know in all the ways that matter. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. What are you saying, Lucas? I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you, and if that makes me a fool in the eyes of people like the Dunlops, then so be it. Before she could respond, the door to the main house opened, spilling light across the yard. They stepped apart quickly as Mr. Crawford emerged with one of the investors, both men smoking cigars. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow, Lucas whispered before heading toward the bunkhouse. Katherine barely slept that night, his words playing over and over in her mind. Could he really care for her that much? And if he did, what future could they possibly have together? The next day was a whirlwind of activity. The investors were taken on a tour of the ranch while Katherine and the other helped prepared for another formal dinner. She caught glimpses of Lucas throughout the day leading a group on horseback, showing off prize bulls, demonstrating roping techniques, but they had no chance to speak privately. That evening's dinner was even grander than the first. Mr. Crawford was clearly pulling out all the stops to impress his guests. The wine flowed freely, and by dessert, the investors were making enthusiastic comments about potential partnerships. As Katherine served coffee, one of the investors, a Mr. Blackwell from Boston, asked Lucas about his background. Crawford tells me you're the best horseman in the territory, Blackwell said. Where did you learn your trade? Texas, sir, Lucas replied. My father ran cattle near San Antonio. And what brought you out here? Lucas's eyes briefly met Katherine's. Looking for opportunity, I suppose, a chance to build something of my own. Ambitious, Blackwell nodded approvingly. I like that in a young man. Have you considered running your own operation someday? It's crossed my mind, Lucas admitted. But it takes capital to start a ranch and I'm still building my stake. Blackwell leaned forward. My partners and I are always looking for promising ventures. Perhaps we should talk further before I leave. A murmur went around the table. Even Mr. Crawford looked surprised and pleased. An endorsement from Blackwell could mean significant investment. Katherine continued serving, her mind racing. If Lucas secured backing from these wealthy Easterners, his prospects would change dramatically. He could have his pick of opportunities and women who wouldn't bring debt and struggle to a marriage. After dinner, the party moved to the parlor for music. One of the investors' daughters played the piano while another sang. Katherine was kept busy serving drinks and refreshments, always aware of Lucas watching her from across the room. When the gathering finally broke up for the night, Katherine slipped outside, needing a moment of fresh air after the stuffiness of the house. She stood on the edge of the veranda, looking out at the starlit ranch. Beautiful night, Lucas said, coming to stand beside her. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Mr. Blackwell asked to meet with me tomorrow morning, he continued. Said he might be interested in backing me if I wanted to start my own place. That's wonderful, Katherine said, forcing enthusiasm into her voice. You must be excited. I'd be more excited if you'd look at me, he said gently. She turned to face him, struggling to keep her emotions in check. You've been given an amazing opportunity, Lucas. You shouldn't let anything hold you back. Is that what you think you do? Hold me back? He shook his head. Katherine, don't you see? This could be good for both of us. Both of us, she repeated, confused. Lucas took her hands. I've been saving for years, hoping to buy a small spread someday. With Blackwell's backing, I could do much more than that. But a ranch isn't just land and cattle, it's a home, and I don't want to build a home alone. Catherine's heart skipped. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want you with me. Your debts, your store, whatever comes with you, I want it all. His blue eyes were intense in the moonlight. I know we haven't known each other long, but out here, people don't always have the luxury of time. Sometimes you have to recognize what's valuable and grab hold with both hands. The townspeople will say you're a fool, she whispered. They said I was too poor to be wanted by any man with sense. Lucas's mouth quirked up in a half smile. Then let me be a fool. You're rich enough for me, Katherine Miller, rich in courage, in kindness, in everything that matters. And then he was kissing her, his arms pulling her close as the stars wheeled overhead. Katherine felt something inside her break open, not with pain, but with joy. For the first time since her father died, she felt hope blooming. When they finally parted, breathless, she rested her forehead against his chest. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she admitted softly. He lifted her chin. Then say you'll consider a future with me. Whatever it looks like, however humble it starts out. Yes, she whispered. I'll consider it. His answering smile was brighter than all the stars above them. The final day of the investor's visit dawned clear and full of promise. Katherine went about her duties with a lightness she hadn't felt in months. Occasionally, she and Lucas would pass each other, exchanging secret smiles that made her cheeks warm. In the afternoon, Lucas met with Mr. Blackwell. Katherine was helping in the kitchen when Mrs. Crawford came in looking pleased. That young man of yours has quite a future ahead of him, she told Katherine, surprising her with the personal comment. Mr. Blackwell just agreed to back him in purchasing the old Wilson place, 500 acres just north of town. Said he hasn't seen such natural talent with horses in years. Katherine's hands stilled on the plate she was drying. The Wilson place, but that's been abandoned for years. Precisely why they can get it for a good price. Mrs. Crawford's eyes twinkled. And it's only 3 miles from town, close enough that a wife could still run a business in town if she wanted to. Katherine blushed deeply, realizing that her feelings for Lucas hadn't been as secret as she'd thought. That evening, after the investors had departed and the house had settled back into its normal rhythm, Lucas found Katherine on the veranda again. I have news, he said, his face alight with excitement. I heard, she replied with a smile. The Wilson place. Blackwell's lending me the money for the down payment, and I'll pay him back with interest from the profits. It needs work, but the land is good and there's a creek that runs year-round. He took her hands. It's enough to start with. We could raise horses. I've always had a way with them. We, Katherine asked, her heart racing. Lucas dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Katherine Miller, I know this is fast. I know people will talk, but I don't want to waste another day without knowing you'll be by my side. Will you marry me? Will you help me build something that's ours? Tears filled her eyes. Lucas, my debts will become our debts and we'll pay them together, he finished firmly. I don't care what anyone says. You're the strongest, most determined woman I've ever met, and I love you for it. Katherine looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity and love. In that moment, all her doubts melted away. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. He let out a whoop that probably woke half the ranch, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Broken Ridge. Mrs. Crawford provided a new dress for Katherine, pale blue with lace at the collar, and Mr. Crawford gave her away in the absence of her father. To Katherine's surprise, many townspeople attended. Even Horace Wilkins came, looking uncomfortable but offering a gruff congratulations. It seemed Lucas's success with the Eastern investors had changed some minds about Katherine's worth. After the ceremony, Lucas approached Horace. I understand my wife owes you money, he said, emphasizing the word wife with pride. Horace shuffled his feet. It's business, Sterling. Nothing personal. Of course. Lucas handed him an envelope. Here's $50. It's a start on what's owed. We'll pay the rest in installments with interest. Horace looked surprised as he took the envelope. That's fair. One more thing, Lucas added, his voice dropping. If I ever hear you've threatened my wife again, our next conversation won't be nearly so pleasant. Understood. Horace nodded quickly and moved away. Catherine, who had overheard, slipped her arm through her new husband's. Was that necessary? Absolutely, Lucas replied, kissing her temple. No one threatens what's mine. They spent their wedding night in the small apartment above Catherine's store, planning to move to the Wilson place once the basic repairs were complete. As they lay together in the narrow bed, Catherine traced the line of Lucas's jaw with her finger. Do you ever worry? She asked softly. That we're risking too much, too quickly. Lucas caught her hand and kissed it. The only risk would have been letting you go. Everything else we can figure out together. 1 year later, Catherine stood on the porch of their farmhouse at the Wilson Ranch, watching as Lucas trained a spirited young colt in the corral. The house was still simple, but they'd added a proper roof, glass windows, and a vegetable garden that thrived in the summer sun. The store in town was now managed by a young widow who paid Catherine a percentage of the profits. Between that income and the growing reputation of Lucas's horse training business, they had managed to pay off half of Catherine's father's debts. Catherine's hand rested on her rounded belly, feeling the gentle kicks of the child that would join them in just a few months. They'd come so far in such a short time. As if sensing her thoughts, Lucas looked up from his work and waved. She waved back, love swelling in her chest. She remembered Mrs. Dunlop's words from that night at the Crawford Ranch. She's too poor to be wanted by any man of standing. How wrong she had been. Catherine hadn't needed money or status to be worthy of love, she just needed someone who could see her true value. Lucas finished with the colt and walked toward the house, his stride confident and easy. As he climbed the porch steps, his face broke into the smile that still made her heart race. What are you thinking about, looking so serious? He asked, pulling her gently into his arms. Just how lucky I am, she replied, resting her head against his chest. And how rich we've become. Lucas's hand joined hers on her belly. The richest people in the territory, he agreed, and getting richer by the day. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Catherine knew that wealth could be measured in many ways, and by the measures that truly mattered, she and Lucas had found a fortune beyond price in each other's arms.